Clip number 2. So, kept, keep. Visual miscue, structural correction. Because keep sounds correct within the context of the sentence. So, just something to keep in mind. These are logical deductions that when we really look at what happens in these running records, we kind of get an idea of what they're doing and how they're actually doing it. This one is, I think this is line 13. Yes, line 13. Fat keeps them warm. Feathers and fat keep penguins warm. And the way this was read, fat keeps them warm. Flippers and feathers and, I self-correct, fat keep penguins warm. Now, what was interesting here was it was cued as by a lot of people, a visual miscue and a visual miscue and a meaning self-correct, which I could see that, but I'm going to argue for it to be flipped here, where it's a meaning miscue. They're making meaning of what's going on in the text, and it's a visual self-correct, and I'll explain why. So they're talking about penguins, obviously. On this page, they're talking about penguins, and this is a book I'm really familiar with because every single first grader I had read through it. So it's about 5 pages of penguin-specific, keeps them warm stuff at this point. And penguins have flippers. You know, that's just part of our schema about penguins. So they are cued into the fact they're talking about penguins, and that penguins have flippers, and they see that F word and the ERS at the end, and flippers. Could be flippers. So you could possibly even argue for a visual miscue there, simply because the F and the E and the R and the S. But more than anything, I think it's meaning with penguins, because we don't tend to think of penguins as having feathers, but they do. Who knew? Okay, so that's the miscue. Tied into meaning. They're making meaning of penguins. They're utilizing what they know about penguins. Now, for the correction, flippers, feathers, both make sense in the context of the sentence. Both of them work. Both of them go forth as they should. It's the visual composition. It's the visual composition of the word, the letters that make up the word feathers, that cue them into the idea that it needs to be changed. So it's not necessarily the meaning of the sentence, because the meaning of the sentence isn't wrong. There is no nonsense to the sentence if they put in flippers. Flippers and fat keep penguins warm. Well, I mean, they could. They could rub their flippers together and create friction and keep themselves warm. I mean, you could make a case for that. A weak case. Probably wouldn't hold up in court, but you could make a case for that. It's really the letters that make up the word feathers that clue them in that flippers is wrong. There's TH, fed, and there's none of that in flippers. So that's a little tricky. The same kind of thing was happening with icy and cold, I think, which was in page 14. A lot of people said that was a meaning kind of mistake. Meaning, sorry, not a meaning mistake, a meaning self-correct. Really, there's no meaning to be corrected there. The meaning's still pretty much the same, whether you use icy or cold. And what creates the self-correct is the visualness of the graphemes that they're looking at. So when the words have similar meanings, it tends not to be a meaning self-correct. It tends to fall into either visual most of the time or structural some of the time. So those are just two of the things to look at with those. Really thinking about what's causing it. So those are the two big things I wanted to point out. In the running record practice piece we were going to do in class today, I'm taking a large piece of text from a young adult book and having you do a running record on that. I have to retype the page for you. I only have a paper copy, and I have them all copied for class, but since we're not in class, I'm going to have to retype it and upload it to OnCourse. But it's an example of taking a larger chapter book, like Do I have one near me? No, I don't. Oh, like you could take Bridge to Terabithia and pull out a good 200 to 500 word sample and have a kiddo do a running record on it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a smaller picture book, but it could be a chapter book as well. And what you're going to do is go through MSV, code it after listening to it, and see what that's all about. So I should hopefully have both of those up by later today, maybe tomorrow by noon. Could be, sorry. Had we had class today, it was all ready to go, but I'm gonna have to retype that page. So unfortunate. But the weather. Ooh, it kind of stopped. Nope, it didn't. Never mind. It just got smaller. Snowflakes just got smaller. So what else do I want to talk about with you? Today we're going to talk about conferencing. You've read the Siberson and the Anderson on conferencing. One talks about reading conferences, one talks about the writing conferences. And since we're not going to have discussion about that in class, I'm going to set up a forum in OnCourse where I'd like something of a, let me think, how many words? I don't know, 600 to 800 words on how these authors think about conferences, how you think about conferences, and then what do you see as the main components of a writing conference and a reading conference. So kind of a compare, contrast, Venn diagram kind of response, simply because we're not having class. So 6 things for next week. I keep adding. Sorry. Okay, so let me think. I've talked about that. Conferences. Next week, you're reading about visual literacy. You're also reading about book clubs. We're going to set up book clubs of our own around this book right here, Choice Words, Peter Johnston. If you don't have it yet, you want to make sure you get it, and soon. Because I think book clubs are going to start in 2 weeks, and you will need your book for that. So make sure you get this, make sure you're ready. I'll put you in groups probably next week and let you know who will be with whom and what exactly we're doing. You're also going to be reading a chapter out of Wild. This is a really great book. Let me see if I can get it without all the glare. Miscue Analysis Made Easy. It's probably one of the best books out there about what MSV analysis really is and really means, and was totally overly helpful. So you'll be reading a chapter out of this, which I believe is the retelling chapter. Let me see. Yes, Conducting Good Retellings is chapter 7, because the big piece about these running records is a retelling. You want kids to be able to retell what the events of a story are, so you know that they're just not word calling when you're doing a running record. It's one of the downfalls of running records is we don't actually check what they've read. We just let them read. So retellings help us make sure that the comprehension piece is there. So chapter 7, Alexandra Wild, should be good. It's uploaded on OnCourse, so you don't need the book. But if MSV is something that's really, really tricky, this might be a good resource. So, let me think. Okay, done. What did I mean by last week's activity? I wrote notes, and I had last week's activity, and I don't know what I meant by that. If I remember, I'll send it an email. Anyway, right now, this is probably it for me. So make sure 2 practices for running records on OnCourse, visit the forum to talk about conferences, your 2 pieces for your LAP, and then your reading responses for next week. So 6 things you have to remember. I'll put them in the email as well, so there's just like kind of a checklist. I know I've sporadically added to it throughout. Sorry again for the late canceling of class. I thought the weather would get better. It's not. It just seems to be easing up a little bit, which is sad because I baked cupcakes for you guys. Homemade chocolate with mocha frosting. I'm going to have to eat them all myself, which is going to make me a very fat person. Anyway, have a good day. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.